She was like the best mother ever. She always put our kids first.
Texas at 4 o'clock. I'm Ken Molestina.
I'm Nicole Baker. Karen's off this afternoon. We're going to start with new information that we got just in the last 30 minutes about a deadly shooting in Mesquite. Police have named a suspect. It's 42-year-old Christopher Witt. He is now wanted for the death of Keisha Hilliard, who was found inside her home that was on Avis Circle over the weekend. Brazeda Holguin sitting down with the family this afternoon.
At 4:18 p.m., law enforcement entered a quiet suburban home and found a woman fatally wounded. The suspect, someone from her inner circle, vanished immediately after. Investigators later linked him to a series of past incidents: unexplained break-ins, repeated surveillance, and financial irregularities. As forensic teams pieced together the evidence, they uncovered a long-hidden pattern of obsession, digital stalking, and secret relationships. The turning point came when surveillance, phone data, and fiber analysis converged. What started as a domestic death now reveals a broader, calculated campaign. Each revelation raises new questions. What motivated the suspect, and how deeply had he been watching her? The case promises to expose more than a single crime. It threatens to reveal the full extent of a secret life. Every case starts with evidence and ends with truth. We examine facts, not theories, details, not drama. This is Sunday Crime, where investigations speak for themselves. Subscribe now and stay updated as we uncover the facts behind every case. 35-year-old Keisha Hilliard's background provides the baseline for understanding the events that unfolded in her final days. She was born and raised in a mid-sized urban neighborhood, in a household that consisted of her mother, father, and 2 siblings. Her upbringing was structured with clear rules and responsibilities. Her parents maintained steady employment, and although the family was not financially privileged, they sustained a stable routine. Keisha attended public schools within walking distance of her home, and early records show consistent attendance and average performance. There were no documented behavioral issues or major conflicts within the family. Family acquaintances described the household as predictable and organized. As she grew older, Keisha's public image was shaped by a reputation for reliability. Friends and co-workers described her as someone who followed routines closely and completed tasks in a methodical manner. She avoided confrontations and typically kept interactions brief unless necessary. Her social media presence was basic and rarely included personal opinions or details about her daily life. Most of her posts were limited to work-related updates or neutral content. Neighbors reported she maintained a consistent lifestyle that did not involve frequent social gatherings or visitors. Her employment was stable. She worked as an administrative assistant at a mid-level office where she followed a structured schedule, arriving between 8 o'clock and 8:10 a.m., taking a short lunch break, and leaving around 4:30 p.m. Her job responsibilities were predictable, involving data entry, scheduling, and document handling. She interacted mainly with a small group of coworkers, and her social circle at work remained limited to surface-level connections. Outside her job, her routines were consistent. She visited the same grocery store weekly, maintained the same exercise route, and frequently spent evenings indoors. Hobbies included reading, organizing personal documents, and completing minor household maintenance tasks. Keisha had experienced a few key turning points during adulthood. These included a breakup that resulted in her relocating to a nearby apartment, a temporary financial setback involving overdue bills, and an unexplained week-long absence from work approximately 2 years before the incident. The most significant event in the past 12 months involved a sudden change in her spending habits, recorded on her bank statements. She began withdrawing cash at irregular hours, though no known emergencies were linked to these transactions. Friends later mentioned she appeared more distracted during this period. During the last month before her death, several changes in her behavior were noted. She became more isolated, often leaving work without speaking to colleagues and avoiding conversations with neighbors. Phone records show increased late-night calls to an unidentified number. Her bank account reflected sporadic cash withdrawals, sometimes twice in one day. There were also minor conflicts at work involving scheduling disputes, though none escalated formally. Neighbors later reported unfamiliar individuals seen near her residence during this period. She made an unusual purchase 3 weeks before the incident. A new prepaid phone, which investigators later retrieved in her apartment. In the final week, a more defined pattern emerged. Keisha visited multiple locations she did not normally frequent, including a convenience store several miles away and a gas station on the opposite side of town, despite not refueling her car. Surveillance footage showed her interacting with an unknown individual in a parking lot, though the exchange lasted less than 1 minute. Deleted messages recovered from her primary phone indicate she was communicating with someone using coded or shortened language. Neighbors reported hearing brief conversations outside her apartment late at night, followed by the sound of a car door closing. One neighbor claimed to see an unfamiliar vehicle parked near her building on 3 consecutive nights. In the last 48 hours, investigators were able to construct a nearly hour-by-hour timeline. On the morning before the incident, Keisha made a short phone call lasting under 1 minute. This was her last documented phone conversation. She then deviated from her usual routine by leaving work early. Between noon and 5 p.m., she visited 3 separate locations: a bank ATM, a small retail store, and a residential street with no clear connection to her. Bank activity shows a cash withdrawal, though she did not purchase anything at the store she entered. Her tone during her final interactions with coworkers was described as rushed and detached. That evening, surveillance footage from a nearby intersection recorded her car being followed by another vehicle at an uncomfortably close distance. Digital records show her phone was active until 10:12 p.m., then abruptly went offline. Social media logs confirm she received a direct message at 9:48 p.m. from an unrecognizable account that investigators later traced to a disposable device. On the day of the crime, Keisha left her apartment at 7:42 a.m., according to building camera footage. She drove along her usual route but detoured into a side street for approximately 6 minutes before rejoining the main road. At 8:10 a.m., she was seen entering a pharmacy. She did not make a purchase and left within 2 minutes. Between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m., multiple surveillance cameras tracked her vehicle across different parts of town, suggesting she was either being followed or attempting to avoid a specific area. Her last confirmed sighting occurred at 12:46 p.m. at an intersection near an abandoned warehouse district. The footage shows her car slowing down, then accelerating out of frame. Shortly after, the same vehicle that had followed her earlier reappeared in the footage, trailing her again. Late that evening, investigators believe she was confronted or taken in a secluded area behind a row of closed industrial buildings. Witnesses reported hearing a car door slam, followed by what sounded like a brief argument. Another witness claimed to see 2 figures near the passenger side of a parked vehicle before it sped away. The timeline between 10 p.m. and midnight contains several gaps that investigators later connected to potential suspects based on recovered GPS and phone coordinates. Keisha was found early the next morning by a delivery driver. Her body was located near a service road, partially concealed by brush. The driver immediately contacted authorities. First responders arrived within minutes and documented the scene. The ground showed signs of movement, and there were clear indications of a struggle. Several personal items typically carried by Keisha were missing, including her primary phone and wallet. Officers noted shoe prints of 2 different sizes, tire marks indicating a rapid departure, and a discarded object believed to have been dropped during the confrontation. This detailed account establishes the foundation for the deeper investigation, the suspects, and the elements that later unfolded in the case. The early investigation began immediately after officers secured the scene. Responding units established a perimeter around the location and began documenting all visible physical evidence. Forensic technicians photographed the area, collected fibers from the ground, retrieved shoe impressions preserved in soft soil, and marked a set of tire tracks positioned near the edge of the property. A partial fingerprint was lifted from a discarded object found close to where the victim was discovered. Technicians also recovered a small torn piece of fabric caught on a fence, which appeared to have been pulled away during movement or struggle. Investigators proceeded with formal statements from individuals living or working near the scene. Neighbors described unusual activity during the evening hours, including the sound of a vehicle idling for an extended period and the sight of someone moving quickly between two parked cars. Friends provided details about the victim's recent behaviors, noting changes in her routine and references to private stress she had not fully explained. Family members supplied timelines from the previous week and confirmed what items were missing from her belongings. From these initial accounts, investigators created a preliminary suspect list that prioritized individuals with recent direct contact, strained relationships, or unexplained presence near her residence. Digital analysis became a priority. The victim's phone was extracted using forensic software designed to recover both active and deleted data. Investigators uncovered fragments of messages that had been manually removed, including 2 conversations that ended abruptly the night before her death. Several attempts to hide or clear location history were noted in the device's metadata. The last GPS ping placed the phone at a location approximately 8 miles from her home before it was shut off. Digital timestamps from social media, email access, and banking apps helped build a precise timeline of her final interactions. The autopsy gave investigators clearer insight into the final hours. The medical examiner determined an approximate time of death within a 2-hour window based on body temperature and internal indicators. The report documented multiple injuries consistent with defensive movement, along with markings indicating physical restraint. Toxicology screenings detected no substances that would have impaired her. There were no signs of long-term illness or pre-existing conditions that could have contributed to her death. The findings confirmed the presence of external force and narrowed the focus toward a targeted act rather than an accident. As statements and evidence were compared, inconsistencies developed. One neighbor reported seeing the victim return home earlier than confirmed by digital timestamps. A friend claimed she spoke with the victim only hours before the incident, but phone records showed their last communication took place the day before. A family member changed details about who the victim was planning to meet, and another individual refused to cooperate after initially agreeing to provide information. Several people formed sudden alibis that investigators later identified as unsupported by physical or digital evidence, prompting investigators to examine their involvement more closely. Persons of interest began to emerge. A close friend became a primary suspect due to unusual behavior following the incident. They provided a statement with details not publicly released, indicating prior knowledge of events. Motives surfaced involving financial tension and a recent disagreement over a shared business arrangement. Evidence placing this individual near the scene included surveillance footage capturing their vehicle in the area and phone data showing their device connecting to a nearby cell tower during the critical time window. The victim's romantic partner, or former partner, was also evaluated. Their history included prior arguments and unresolved conflicts. Investigators found evidence of tracking behavior, such as repeated drive-bys recorded on private surveillance from nearby homes. Phone records indicated multiple attempts to contact the victim within minutes of her last confirmed appearance. After the incident, this individual exhibited behavior investigators labeled as evasive, including inconsistent statements and avoidance of follow-up interviews. Another lead involved an unknown figure observed near the location on the night of the incident. A neighbor provided a general description which aided the development of a police sketch. Surveillance cameras captured a person wearing dark clothing walking past multiple times, and a vehicle of interest, an older model sedan, was recorded leaving the area shortly before the estimated time of death. The combination of the sketch, footage, and car description created a separate investigation track, eventually revealing patterns matching other sightings in the weeks prior. Investigators then uncovered a hidden element in the victim's communications. Extracted phone data revealed conversations with an individual not known to family or close friends. The tone of these exchanges suggested private meetings and possible financial involvement. This person had used multiple phone numbers and messaging platforms, indicating attempts to avoid traceability. Further research connected them to other undisclosed interactions, revealing a personal and financial link the victim had not shared with anyone. This discovery introduced a new motive category and expanded the list of possible suspects. Breakthrough moments shifted the direction of the case. Forensic testing identified DNA from a small object recovered near the scene. The profile matched a person already appearing on the early suspect list, placing them directly in the crime area. Fibers found on the victim's clothing matched the interior of a vehicle owned by the same suspect. Digital evidence linking their phone to the vicinity was confirmed through tower data, corroborating a pattern of movement consistent with the timeline of events. A new witness came forward after several days of investigation. They provided a statement describing a confrontation they observed between the victim and a specific individual days before her death. According to the witness, heated words were exchanged, followed by a visible threat. Their account introduced a new layer of suspicion and aligned with earlier discrepancies in that person's statements. This testimony strengthened the connection between the victim and the suspect who had already been attempting to distance themselves from the investigation. Bank and phone triangulation allowed investigators to map the movements of both the victim and the leading suspect. Local ATM footage captured the suspect withdrawing cash shortly before the estimated time of death. GPS routes from the suspect's vehicle showed deviations from their reported location. Phone tower connections pinpointed their device traveling along a route that intersected with the victim's final movements. These data points produced a detailed timeline positioning the suspect within minutes and meters of the crime. Recovered evidence provided additional confirmation. A search of the suspect's residence revealed burned items in an outdoor fire pit, including melted metal and partially destroyed fabric fibers matching the victim's clothing. Hidden under flooring panels, detectives found clothes stained with biological material. A nearby dumpster search produced disposed belongings linked directly to the victim. Deleted security footage from a business near the scene was recovered by digital experts, revealing the suspect's vehicle at the location during the critical time frame. These combined findings formed the foundation of the next phase of the investigation. As investigators expanded the case, they uncovered several past incidents that connected directly to the primary suspect. 2 unexplained events from the previous year matched the same pattern seen in the current case. The first involved a report from a woman who claimed she was followed for several nights by an unknown vehicle. The second concerned a break-in at a residence where nothing was stolen, but items were moved and personal documents were disturbed. Both incidents had gone unresolved, but new evidence linked them to the suspect through cell tower data, partial surveillance captures, and vehicle identification. The discovery of these earlier incidents established a consistent pattern of behavior marked by pursuit, intrusion, and targeted interest in specific individuals. Investigators noted that the suspect's movements placed him repeatedly near the victim's homes, workplaces, and common routes. This emerging pattern confirmed that the suspect's actions were not random but deliberate. With further investigation, several concealed aspects of the suspect's life were uncovered. Records revealed involvement in small-scale financial fraud, including unauthorized withdrawals, manipulation of electronic transfers, and forged signatures. This activity had remained undetected due to the small amounts involved, but the pattern was consistent over multiple months. Investigators also identified a hidden relationship the suspect had kept from family and associates, involving frequent late-night communication, unreported meetings, and large unexplained payments. This relationship became relevant when messages indicated attempts to track the victim and gain access to her routine. Evidence also showed a personal obsession with the victim, demonstrated through repeated visits to locations she frequented and saved online searches related to her schedule. A review of digital devices confirmed that the suspect had monitored her social media activity daily. This behavior expanded into a documented history of stalking, including repeated presence near her residence and workplace. Witnesses later confirmed seeing the same vehicle circling her neighborhood multiple times before the incident. As suspicion grew, investigators applied pressure through structured surveillance and controlled interviews. Police surveillance began with discreet monitoring of the suspect's home, workplace, and vehicle. Officers documented frequent late-night outings, unexplained travel to remote areas, and attempts to dispose of small bags at multiple locations. Undercover units followed him for several days, noting changes in behavior whenever police vehicles were nearby. Interrogations were conducted in phases, starting with routine questioning and progressing into targeted inquiries about the victim, his whereabouts, and the past incidents. During these sessions, the suspect provided inconsistent statements, shifting timelines, and contradicting earlier claims. Search warrants were executed across 3 locations connected to the suspect, including his residence, vehicle, and storage unit. Among the items seized were discarded electronics, clothing matching witness descriptions, handwritten notes containing addresses and dates, and digital storage devices. Forensic teams extracted valuable information from these materials, strengthening the case. The arrest occurred after the suspect made a critical mistake. During a monitored phone call, he referenced details about the crime scene that had not been publicly released. This slip-up provided investigators with probable cause to move forward. Additional forensic confirmation arrived when lab results matched fibers found on the victim's clothing to material recovered from the suspect's vehicle. Phone evidence further sealed the case, as GPS data showed his device traveling along the victim's route on the night of the incident, stopping for extended periods at key locations. The suspect was taken into custody without incident. Prosecutors filed multiple charges, including first-degree murder, unlawful surveillance, stalking, evidence tampering, and financial fraud. The supporting evidence included digital footprints, forensic matches, witness statements, and recovered items tying the suspect to the victim before and after the incident. Prosecutors released an early statement outlining the strength of the evidence, the pattern of predatory behavior, and the documented timeline that placed the suspect at the scene. The court proceedings began with an extensive pretrial phase marked by motions and delays. The defense attempted to block digital evidence on grounds of privacy violations and questioned the validity of the search warrants. Several motions were denied after the court ruled that probable cause had been clearly established. The defense strategy focused on discrediting the timeline and suggesting alternate explanations for surveillance footage and phone data. The prosecution emphasized the consistency of evidence across digital, physical, and testimonial sources. Key witnesses were listed, including neighbors, co-workers, forensic specialists, and individuals who experienced prior incidents involving the suspect. During the trial, both sides delivered structured opening statements outlining the facts they intended to prove. The prosecution presented shock revelations, including previously unseen footage showing the suspect's vehicle near the victim's home shortly before the incident. Cross-examinations revealed inconsistencies in the suspect's earlier statements and further highlighted his attempts to conceal relevant information. Emotional testimony was delivered by individuals close to the victim, providing a factual account of her final days and interactions. Forensic experts presented data from phone extractions, fiber analysis, GPS mapping, and digital reconstruction of the suspect's movements. All evidence aligned with the prosecution's narrative, establishing a continuous link between the suspect and the victim. The jury deliberated for several hours, reviewing testimony, forensic reports, and timeline documentation. Their final ruling found the suspect guilty on all major charges, citing overwhelming evidence and a clear pattern of behavior leading up to the incident. Public reaction was immediate, with community members expressing relief that the case had been resolved and that the victim's story had been fully brought to light. In the aftermath, the suspect received a lengthy prison sentence. During sentencing, the judge delivered a detailed statement outlining the severity of the actions, the deliberate nature of the stalking, and the repeated attempts to obscure evidence. The victim's family issued statements describing the impact the case had on their lives, focusing on the factual consequences rather than emotional commentary. Long-term effects of the case included increased community awareness regarding stalking behavior and improved reporting systems for suspicious activity. Local authorities implemented new measures for early detection of harassment patterns and encouraged the community to document recurring incidents. The family began a structured healing process, establishing foundations and public education programs focused on safety awareness and crime prevention. The legacy of the victim's life became tied to increased vigilance and improved community protections. Despite the conviction, several unanswered questions remained. Investigators continued to examine missing pieces of evidence, including unidentified fingerprints found at one location and gaps in the suspect's digital history. Speculation persisted about whether an accomplice assisted in monitoring or tracking the victim. These unresolved issues kept certain aspects of the case open for further review. Facts verified. Case concluded. Justice is found in what remains proven. This is Sunday Crime until the next investigation. Subscribe for more verified stories and real criminal investigations.